Welcome to Watching the Throne, a lyrical analysis of Kanye West. My name is Travis Bean. I know Chris still isn't here to get over it. And today we have a very special guest, an old school guest. If you're an old listener of Watching the Throne, you're going to know these dulcet tones the second you hear them. We have the one and only, you even know the snort. You know who it is already. Our resident Taylor Swift expert. And as we decided just before we started recording, our resident cultural expert on Zeck.
Thank you so much for having me back. It feels good to be back.
Yeah, it's crazy. We can't see each other, but which is different from how we used to record because we both used to live in St. Paul. But
Yes.
I don't know. It feels like you're here.
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. I was telling Travis, before he asked me to be on, that I was listening back this week to our old episodes, our old Taylor episodes, which makes me sound really kind of narcissistic that I was listening to myself. But I was I miss those guys.
Those guys were great.
Yeah.
Well, we miss you too. I mean, there's not a lot of Taylor news to even talk about. Well, I guess there is because
No, she came out
Taylor
with a new
dropped the
album.
album. Yeah, and she talked about Kanye in the interview. We probably should have had you on.
I know. Yeah, that was wild. I was so annoyed with her when she talked about me.
You know what? We're trying to put away the bad energy today. We're just going to talk about.
Good point.
Yeah. We're talking about Jesus is King.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited for this because I think Anna and I are coming at this album from different angles. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. Anna and I used to talk a lot about Kanye. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to put a percentage to it. Like 60% of our conversations were Kanye involved.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say it was an early part of us becoming friends. Period.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was. Yeah.
Because anytime somebody else is a Kanye fan, you're like, oh my God, you don't hate him? Talk to me.
Yes, exactly. And we started working together post Jesus. So I feel like that was also a major bonding time for Kanye.
Oh yeah. It's also rare to find somebody who likes Jesus.
Yes, I know. Isn't that so weird to think about in retrospect?
Yeah. Whereas today it's considered now it's revered as a classic.
Yes. It's almost hard to remember that so many people hated it.
Well, that's usually the rotation with the Kanye album. The Life of Pablo went through it. I feel like Ye is still really going through it. And Jesus is King, I can't really tell what's going on right now. I think the natural reaction is to hate a Kanye album, but I actually think the reception's been okay.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be way more negative than it has been.
I mean, the lead up to it's been pretty negative. People bashing him for selling Sunday service merch and shit. But yeah. But speaking of that, before we get into Jesus is King, we want to ask each guest more broadly about Kanye. And obviously, Anna's a huge Kanye fan. Not always, I think a lot like me, not always a fan of Kanye in the public and the way he chooses to communicate. And sometimes the ideas he's expressing aren't fully worked out in his own head.
Yeah.
But, that's what Kanye does. He's always thinking out loud. Say it out loud just to see how it feels. Isn't that the line?
Yeah.
So let's look at it broadly. Since Ye, let's start at Ye. When Ye comes out, what are your feelings about Kanye? And are you a fan of Ye?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Ye, actually. And I feel like that's what I really wanted to talk about in this episode. I was actually super nervous to record this episode because I feel like I've been on this personal journey with my relationship with Kanye, and it's not all positive. But I think it's important to be honest about that because I think it makes for interesting conversation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm conflicted too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think leading up to Ye, I was having a really hard time with Kanye. I think what I realized is that Kanye's always been controversial. It's always been hard to be a Kanye fan. You always have to defend him. But I think that I thought subconsciously that there would honestly be a tipping point where people got him and where people saw him for who he was, and where I wouldn't have to do that anymore as a fan. And I think that the Trump stuff and the MAGA stuff really came out of left field for me. I really was not expecting that. And I almost like underestimated what a wild card Kanye can be. And I think before that, I had always sort of, if not always agreed, I could see where he was coming from or understand his point. But that era was really, really hard for me as a fan to defend the slavery stuff. And even if I could get to a point where like I saw what he was saying, I was kind of frustrated with him that I would still have to defend him. I was like, I'm kind of exhausted of having to defend why I like you. Yeah, exactly. And like, I was just like, come on, man, like give us a break. Like you're 40 something years old. At some point, if you're tired of being misunderstood, then you should be able to find a way to communicate your thoughts a little bit better. And I just reached a point where I just didn't really want to defend him anymore.
So did you kind of like block him out?
Yeah, I kind of took a step back from him. And it was really, really hard to do that because Kanye is like one of the artists of my life. Like I've been a huge fan since I was in high school. So it sounds weird, but it was actually like really painful to have to do that and to not feel like connected to him and what he was doing anymore. But I didn't want to completely write him off. And I've also always had a hard time just in pop culture separating the artist from the art. I've never really been able to do that. But I also never really had anybody who I like really, really loved and went to bat for do something that I super, super, super disagreed with. Like I was never a huge Woody Allen fan, for example, or something like that, to where I had never had to go through that with an artist that I really liked. People who, I don't know, turned out in the Me Too movement were actually monsters or whatever. Like I was never that big of fans of them. So it was easy for me to just be like, all right, you're canceled, like write you off. But I had never had to do that with somebody who truly was a cornerstone for me in my life. So that was really difficult. But then I really liked Ye a lot.
Right.
And I thought that it provided so much clarity and answered so many questions. And it was just beautiful on so many levels. And I thought that album also would provide that clarity for the general public pretty much. And I thought that it would help him explain himself a little bit more, not get back in people's good graces, but be something that people could listen to and understand him more, for better or for worse. And I was actually really surprised that it didn't do that, and that people were so closed off to it and wouldn't even give it a chance.
Yeah, I think, I mean, so much to unpack there. So a big thing for me, and I'm totally with you there, like on a lot of the public antics of Kanye. There are things that I think I understand about what Kanye meant, and that's just a result of like following him so much and having a podcast about him, that I'm going to get a lot of the stuff he says. So when he goes on TMZ and I read it on paper, the quote is not slavery was a choice. That's something like Nike took hold of and everyone thought that's what he said. He said 400 years, that sounds like a choice to me. And when I read that on paper, it's like kind of poetic. Like, okay, yeah, he's saying like they've remained slaves. And I think that's a really interesting idea. It's something he's explored, but that's not really the way he said it, the way it's on paper. He screamed it in the middle of a TMZ room, and then the
Yep.
words missed it. And it's part of a whole package now, and that's all everybody sees, and everyone sees the headlines. And that's why I love the art, because to me, the art provides context for everything and gives you a layer deeper than the headlines you see in the morning. And I'm there with you. Ye, to me, spoke to me in that way, because that's the point of art. Art is meant to be profound and transcendent and provide meaning to things that you couldn't quite piece together. And it's not like on Ye, Kanye came out and explained what he meant by, 400 years.
Mm-hmm.
He did it in this narrative. He did it over the course of 7 songs. He did it in this personal journey where he starts in a dark place and comes out on the other side in light and ready to be a kid again and ready to be a father to his daughter. Like, it's such a poetic way to explore all that, but no one's going to see that. And I get it. Like, if you're not a Kanye fan, like, why the fuck you're not going to go listen to Ye and pick apart its meaning and be like, oh, that's what Kanye meant. No, you're just going to know Kanye went to TMZ and screamed a bunch. So, and that's where I'm there with you, is that's the importance of that moment where you're in TMZ. You have to just be better and clear about what you mean if you're going to do that. If you just want to be an artist and express yourself as an artist, great. But that's not what Kanye does. Kanye, he stands on the Rolling Stone table and raps his album. He's like he wants that so bad, yet he's never been able to harness or channel like the proper communicative techniques you need to be influential in that position. It's the frustration you'll always have with him. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I wonder why he's never been able to grasp it. Maybe it's just not him. Like, maybe it's just not who he is.
I think you're right. I think that's what it is that Kanye just wouldn't agree with that. And to an extent, like, I kind of see what he means, because there's something really beautiful about just being naked and just going out there and saying what you think and working through thoughts and not coming into a conversation or a rant without like thinking through everything and having perfect talking points like a politician would do. Like, in that way, like, I appreciate him because he's not a politician. He's not somebody who's been told what to say and how to say it right and reach these people. He just says what he thinks. And again, like, I find that inspiring, but at the same time, if he wants to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, like, there are just rules to play by. Like, that's just the way it is. And that's what you said. Like, Kanye's a wild card. Like, I think he might know that, but he just like has accepted that that's not me. Like, I'm going to run into TMZ and like say it imperfectly. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that something I was just thinking about while you were talking too, is that who he's talking to makes a big difference too. Like, one thing I like about your guys' podcast, for example, is that you guys both kind of talk it out. Like, you don't always have your fully formed opinion. And that's part of what your conversation is talking it out and seeing where you get to. But you both have an understanding of the other person. And I think like Kanye would be so fun to like go get a drink with, or just like just shoot the shit and talk for like hours. But that's not, when he goes on TMZ, all sorts of people watch TMZ or read those headlines or whatever. And they're all coming at it with their own judgments and preconceived ideas and all of that. And so it doesn't always work to just put your thoughts out there like that and in such a free-flowing way, because you don't know how the person is going to receive it, because you just don't even know who's going to be listening to you.
Yeah. So basically, to wrap up this whole conversation, being a Kanye fan is hard.
Yeah. And yes. And I think I just reached a point where I was like, man, this is not getting easier. If anything, it's getting more difficult. Right.
Yeah. Because like, I mean, you really spoke to it too. Like that, I like the way you put it, that it hurt. Like it felt like you were breaking up with Kanye in a way. And I think that's the way a lot of people felt. It's like, who is he speaking to? You're right. Like, he doesn't, not that he doesn't realize, but like when he says that comment about slavery and when he endorses Trump, it's almost like, I don't know. He's so, I think Chris Evans had a tweet about saying like, oh, Kanye's view is so myopic. And I get that because Kanye doesn't care that he's going to hurt all of his fans who have loved him forever by putting on a Trump hat, because to him, it's important to express himself and to put on this hat and say like, I can do it. Like, and that way I get it's myopic, but it's also, to me, a kind of a universal move, because Kanye is hoping that showing the inner strength he has to do something like that will inspire other people to embrace ideas that maybe aren't standard or aren't politically correct or aren't accepted by the broader culture. Like, there's something beautiful in that too. And to me, that's just the polarity of being a Kanye fan. Like, there's so much good and so much bad. And at some point you have to just choose which one you're going to embrace.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to balance those two. And like, I don't blame people for just being like, I can't do it anymore. Like, it's too stressful.
Yeah. And I think that another aspect of this is just the time that we're in right now, this era. Everything feels very, very serious. And I think that it doesn't leave a lot of room for nuance, because like Trump, for example, feels very, very dangerous. So it's hard to look at it from the perspective that you just said and explained, which makes a lot of sense when it's Donald Trump. It's not somebody who, there's bad parts of him, but there's also good parts or whatever. Like, we're talking about Donald Trump, And I think in a lot of conversation today, there's just not a lot of nuance. It feels like good and bad, black and white. And I wonder what this all would be looking like if this was happening 10 years ago, or if this happened even with like George Bush, and whether he would get the same amount of backlash, or just what even the conversation would look like about it. I think the other hard part too that I was going to say, and why it hurts so much, is when I was listening to your first reactions video, you were talking about what it was like when Life of Pablo came out. And that felt like we were on top of the world as Kanye fans for a while. Like, that was just so fucking fun. Like, that album was amazing. It just felt like such a party. And I think it was really hard to like come down from that.
Yeah, now it's stressful when a Kanye release happens, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like at that time too, like, he seemed to be doing really well. Like, he and Kim were on top of the world. Like, everything was just in an upward swing.
Yeah, I think actually, now that you're saying, the way you're putting it makes me realize how I went into this album. Because Ye was one thing, like, I was still kind of caught up in the wind of everything that was happening with Kanye, and it was still like kind of exciting in that way. But now, we're a year and a half on, and Kanye's been pretty much quiet the whole year. And I think people have just kind of settled into canceling Kanye. Like, he feels more removed from culture like now than like I feel like he's been in a while.
Yeah, totally.
I was just going to say, going into Jesus is King, like, that's such a different feeling, because the Life of Pablo, it is a party. You're hyped up. You're ready to go. Jesus is King, like, it's just kind of here now. Like, we haven't heard from Kanye in 9 months. It's such a weird feeling to be going into an album like that with Kanye.
Yeah, no, that's such a good way of saying it. And I think that this album has made me confront my own expectations of Kanye in a weird way, even as a fan, because I think, Kanye always talks about people wanting to put him in a box and how he doesn't want to be put into a box. And it's interesting because I was totally there with him, during all his Jesus interviews and all of that. I was like 100%, like, people do want to put him in a box and he doesn't want to. And with this album, I was like, holy shit, like even as a fan, I subconsciously kind of put him in a box sometimes of like what
Sure.
I want from Kanye and like what I think of it, even though I've been like riding with him for so long. And I didn't think that I had those expectations.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I guess that's just what happens when you love somebody that much. When someone means that much to you, like you want their music to bring out that feeling that it always brought out before. And when he makes what is basically a gospel album, like something so different and so out of left field, it's really hard to find your footing with something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I like gospel music too. I don't, it's not something that maybe like I listen to every week, but if you looked at like my Spotify top 100 at the end of the year, like there's going to be some Kirk Franklin on there. There's going to be Mary LaCrae. Like I like gospel music. So I think I was ready for that in that sense too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, let's get into it then. You put on Jesus is King. You're expecting a gospel album. Like we all know that's going to happen. Every lyric's going to be about Jesus. We've all heard about it. What's like, I guess starting from the very beginning, like from Every Hour to Salah, like which is like a crazy transition. Like what are your feelings as you dip into the album?
So this was what it was so difficult for me because I was expecting to have a very strong reaction one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to love it or I thought I was going to hate it. And I kind of had like a middle of the road reaction. Like I was like, that was good. And I was thinking about like when you and I used to work together and like our least favorite criticism of any story that we ever wrote was when someone would be like, that was good. Like that was solid. Because it means that it didn't like provoke that much of a reaction out of someone one way or the other. Right. Like I can deal with it if you're like, I hated that story. Like we can talk about that. Or if you're like, I loved it or whatever. But just having that reaction to a Kanye album was shocking to me and something that I've been trying to figure out and think about in the hours since it came out. So I guess I was curious, you said on your first reaction that your first time around, it was underwhelming to you. What, you explained like what was underwhelming to you, but what do you think changed like between the first and second listen to you?
I think it was more, and I covered this on my episode, but I think I went into it with like a critical mindset and was like, okay, I'm going to piece together this album. And I think this is the beauty of Kanye is it's never easy. He's always one step ahead of you. And there's always little nuances and little ticks you don't quite pick up on. And so from song to song, I don't think I was in the right mindset for it, which makes it sound like I'm just like defending Kanye. Like maybe he made a shitty album and I just had a good reaction to it. I don't know. But I think that was what it was for me is because it's Kanye, everything about Kanye is wrapped up in it, especially when you host a Kanye West podcast. You have no life. Like I go into it thinking like, how am I going to talk about it on the show? Like, how is this going to connect to that? Like I wrote this whole article on Forbes. I hope like, I don't sound stupid now because none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
Those are all the thoughts going through my head as I'm listening to it. And to be honest, my first listen through, it's so weird to think about because I've listened to it like 50 times now.
Yeah.
And to me now the album is so coalesced and whole and like from front to back, it feels like one giant journey. But the first time, like, I don't even like really remember it. Like if I'd listened through it once and you had asked me to like talk about like, oh, what did you think about On God? I would have been like, I don't remember how that song goes. Like, I wasn't super engaged with it. And the album's so short and the songs are so short. And that's so weird for somebody who, has made like Runaway, has made like a 9-minute epic. You're kind of just like, man, like, I don't know what this is. And I think that's mostly what it was, is I was kind of just confused because Kanye's never made an album like this. I know Ye is only 7 songs and it's 21 minutes long, but you still have like a ghost town in that album. Like you have these big wandering epics, Jesus is King is different. It's something that moves from moment to moment really quickly, and you have to like stay with it if you're going to grasp it. So I think that's mostly what it was for me the first time. And since, it's just, I think a lot of it has been what we've talked about, because we went into Jesus is King with radio silence from Kanye. He hasn't been anywhere. We don't know what Jesus is King is going to sound like at all. And I think that weird suppressed feeling I had going into it like contributed to that. And now I guess the listening experience for me has become, I have nothing really shaping my views in this album anymore. Like, it is something so different and so removed from everything Kanye's done that it's become really exciting for me to listen to this album. I listen to it from front to back. I have it on repeat, and it feels so cohesive and whole. Like, the 2-minute songs don't bother me at all anymore. Like, I'm excited for it to dip into like the new song. It feels like one giant journey that I'm going on. So that's my pretentious answer to that.
No, that's really interesting. That makes a lot of sense. See, so I was thinking about it too, in that Ultra Light Beam is like one of my favorite Kanye songs. And that's like a gospel song. And so I thought that I would like love Jesus is King. And I think that and so I was thinking about kind of like what makes Ultra Light Beam different to me versus Jesus is King. And I don't know why it is, but Jesus is King was kind of like what I thought it was going to be. And it didn't really surprise me that much.
Interesting.
And I think that was a really different sensation of listening to a Kanye album than past ones have been, because in the past they've really surprised me. There's stuff that like I didn't even know I needed, like I didn't know I needed an Ultra Light Beam in my life. And I didn't think that would be the song to kick off Life of Pablo. And like I cried the first time I heard that song. And like I've cried a lot of times to that song. And I didn't really have like an emotional reaction to listening to Jesus is King the first time. And I was really surprised by that too, because I also cried listening to Yay. And I think that part of it was that it didn't really surprise me that much or like catch me off guard in a weird way.
Interesting. I'm curious about that actually. So you say the album was everything you expected. What exactly were you expecting? Like, what are you hearing that wasn't surprising to you?
Yeah, I think that I thought it was going to be somebody who had just found God and who has been on this journey of like losing themselves and then finding themselves again and like finding God again. And that he's kind of at the beginning of his spiritual journey. And I guess on first listen, I didn't find it super, not deep, but like difficult to understand what he was getting at. And normally I like have a hard time. Like I have to listen to you guys' podcast and be like, totally. What is he even talking about? So I was surprised that I was like, yeah, I get it. Like I get what he's getting at. And maybe there is more beyond the surface level, and that's part of it that I just haven't even like accessed yet. But I was surprised to feel like I immediately understood like what he was getting at. And I think it will be interesting to see where he goes from here and what his spiritual journey continues to look like.
That's interesting. I know what you mean, because I kind of had that fear going into it that, I hope I say this properly. I'm not religious, so I'm not trying to like bash it, but when you talk about God and how much you love God and how she's improved your life, like it's not like that's super deep or poetic. Like you don't have to like you don't have to like come up with big words and like flowing narratives to express it. You just say it and like you feel the power of it. And I think you're right. Like that's a lot of what's happening here. Kanye's in that state and he just wants to express to the world and talk to God. And I find that part powerful about it, but I know what you mean that like, yeah, of course that's what's happening. It's a gospel album. Like that's what all gospel albums do, but it just doesn't sound like Ultra Light Beam, which is like, I think probably what a big problem will be for a lot of people is that Kanye doesn't have those big epics of songs with like 6 parts and it's blowing you away. Like it, to me, the entire album is like one long song. Like it's Ultra Light Beam for like 27 minutes or something.
Totally.
Or Runaway for 20. But I totally get that. And I could see just like going from song to song, like, okay, he's saying this, like, okay, he's kind of saying that again, like in a different way though. Like I understand that reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's made me think that maybe I just need to accept this album for what it is and what Kanye wants to say and not put my own expectations of what I think that what I want out of a Kanye album or what I've come to expect out of it.
Right. I get that. Yeah. And I guess to me, I know what you mean. It's not like, I don't think this album is like Yeezus where like there's literally a 3-act structure. Like maybe there is a structure to this album, but like it's not like you could put this in movie form. Like it kind of feels like 808s to me in a lot of ways, to where there's movement and there's a flow to the track by track build up throughout the album. Like you could see like kind of a story, but it's mostly somebody just kind of expressing themselves. And it feels, I feel like usually with the Kanye album, I picture a character more than I picture Kanye. Like I picture a Yeezus character or I picture the Pablo character. With this, like I picture Kanye. Like this feels like, you know, a deep look into his soul, into like his thought process about everything that's been happening. And I don't think you usually get that with Kanye. Like even Ye to me has like a 3-1-3 structure and like kind of is just like a story. This feels like, you know, somebody's journal. I think maybe you said that earlier. It feels like somebody really getting out thoughts on something, very deep personal thoughts. And I kind of have accepted that about it. And that's what to me I find exciting about the album is that it's something really different from Kanye. And it's not something I'm going to understand immediately. Kind of like I did with Ye. I felt like I got Ye and Kids See Ghost like pretty quickly because they both had a 3-1-3 structure. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how that narrative goes. That's pretty easy. This isn't like that. It's something that is open and moves differently and is just like, it just feels like a giant, not confession, but like we're just capturing this moment in Kanye's life where he's trying his best to connect with God and speak the word of God to the world. Like it's just one little moment in time. And I'm kind of fascinated by that aspect of it.
That's such a good way of putting it. I really like your comparison of it. It's like reading someone's journal because that is what it feels like. And I'm also curious, like part of why I said I'm curious to see kind of how his spiritual journey continues and evolves from here is that I think that, at least from what I can tell so far, it's been a very traditional journey, and his take on Christianity has been like fairly traditional. And I also am not a religious person, so hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn or whatever, but I think that it surprised me that the way that he went about it is that he doesn't curse anymore. He's going to change the lyrics to his songs when he performs them live. I don't know if you watched that episode or saw that clip of the Kardashians where he was telling Kim that he didn't like how sexy she was dressing.
Yeah.
I was that was just weird to me because I mean, just on a like objective level, that costume was like supposed to be really campy. I didn't think it was like sexy, but whatever. But I was surprised not surprised, but he seems to have like a very traditional take on Christianity. And I in some ways, I mean, I was going to say that that's a bummer to me, but I also just need to come at it from a non-judgmental perspective and just be like, that's just where he's at and how he is. But I think that for me personally, it would have been more interesting if he was like, you can be a Christian and still curse and still have your wife dress super sexy. Sure. And still call yourself Jesus and all of that kind of stuff.
He doesn't sound like a very, very progressive Christian.
Yes, exactly. And I think that has surprised me in some senses too. And you can tell that in Jesus is King also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he talked about that a lot in the Zane Lowe interview. Like he's still finding his footing with it all. And he kind of basically said like, look, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes in the beginning and I'm not always going to be like, it's going to be tough for me to like fit into the world as a Christian and like express myself as a newborn Christian. So that's just going to be a part of the process, I think. But what I was going to say was, I agree with you that his whole public narrative with becoming a Christian again has been kind of traditional, and that aspect of it like isn't that exciting. But again, that's why I love Kanye, because he's like an artist first and foremost. And I actually do think there's a lot of nuance and character and layers to Jesus is King that reveal a little more to that. So, I mean, a lot of the songs are just him talking about how he loves God now and he's ready to be a Christian and blah, blah, blah. But the soundscape of the album is also weird and like abrasive and coarse and like synthy. Like it, in a lot of ways, it isn't really a gospel album. Like it sounds kind of angry and uses a lot of the elements that like a Yeezus song would use. It's not crazy and it doesn't have like the movement of a Yeezus song. You know, like none of these songs sound like Hold My Liquor or anything.
No.
But it kind of has that element of it, like the attitude and the tone. Like a lot of these songs are angry. Like on Hands On, Kanye is like mad at Christians and the way Christians have treated him. And I feel like there's just so much there that is revealing more than the traditional narrative that we're getting out in the public. I'm kind of there with you. Like when Kanye is talking about, you know, the typical run of the mill shit you hear when people are like, I'm born again, you know, in his own crazy Kanye way. But for the most part, it's like just traditional shit. But I guess the more I listen to the album, the less I hear that actually. And I hear somebody who is frustrated with the public and being accepting of him becoming who he is, and somebody who is realizing that becoming a born again Christian like isn't easy. Like this is something he's going to have to work through. And I really love that aspect of it on the album.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of putting it. And I think really gets at a lot of the reaction too.
Yeah.
And I think what's been interesting for me too, you know, I was talking about nuance before, and that there's not a lot in the world, but also I would like to see kind of more nuance within the Kanye fandom too. And the type of conversation that we can have about the album. Like, I think it seems to be a lot of, and I think it's partly because of what it's like to be a Kanye fan.
Yeah. Totally.
But there's a vibe of like, you either get it or you don't. And if you don't get it, you're not a true fan. And if you think this album is good, on the opposite side, then like you're a fucking idiot. You're just a stan. You think anything Kanye does is good. You know what I mean? Like you're blinded. And like, I don't think that that's very productive or helpful in talking about it at all, you know?
Think?
Yeah, I know. And it's just crazy because I was thinking like, especially for any artist that has a really long career, chances are you're not going to like every single album, and that's okay. And it's okay for one album to just like not be for you. Like this Jesus is King just might not be for me, but that doesn't mean that I can't continue to be a Kanye fan or that I need to totally like
he's not canceled.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could just be like, this is just like
Not
didn't
mine. Not for
necessarily
me.
do it for me. Yeah, exactly. Um, and it doesn't mean that he's like lost it or that like old Kanye is better or whatever.
Mhm.
I just wish that there was more nuance there.
Right.
But I also think that it's interesting to think about why this album might not be for me. Like, I think that that's kind of the
Mhm.
conclusion I've come to, is that I think that this album is good. I like it. But I was thinking about it and I was like, if I wanted to be listening to a gospel album, I wouldn't reach for Jesus is King. But
Right.
if I wanted to listen to a Kanye album, I also wouldn't reach for Jesus is King. So where does this album, like, where does it leave me personally? And how do I view it in his discography? And that's something that
Yeah.
I've been kind of thinking a lot about, of like, how do I view this album? If it's not, my favorite Kanye album, it's not like my favorite gospel album. Like, is it just one where it's just not for me, and like that's okay?
Yeah. What a weird state to be in because whenever a Kanye album has come out in the past for you, like, it's just been lovely for the months afterwards. You can listen to it nonstop and like you're in this hyped state. Where with this, like, do you even want to listen to it 24 hours later? Like, is this something you'll even reach for the next couple weeks? It's weird.
Right. Yeah, it is weird. And that's what I'll be interested to see. And I think in the previous album releases, like, this made me sound sad, but like every album that's come out has become my new favorite Kanye album. Like,
Yeah, I'm
I
in
was
that
like,
boat.
oh yeah, where I'm like, oh, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is my favorite. I'm like, no, Jesus is my favorite. No, Life of Pablo is my. So it's weird to have this one maybe not be like my new favorite.
Or
Um,
even more than that, just like maybe one you don't enjoy at all. Like the only one is his discography where you're just like, eh.
yeah, and like I'm having a hard time deciding whether it really is just the album that I'm like on, or if the past year and a half, 2 years made it to where I was never going to enjoy this album that much. Like,
Yeah.
I wish I could more look at this album just truly in a vacuum
Yeah.
and not look at it or listen to it with the past 2 years and the moment in culture that we're in and all of that. Because I really can't decide what it is that's informing my just like
Mm-hmm.
kind of middle of the road reaction to it.
Yeah. I think that's probably how a lot of people feel. And more than what's interesting about your take is a lot of people just like, cancel Kanye, and they're in such a upset state of Kanye that they're going to hate Jesus King no matter what. And they've decided they've hated it before they've heard a single note of it. Where you came in, you really wanted to make it work. Like, you were ready to like love a Kanye album and have it make sense of stuff. And it just leaves you in a weird middle ground. Like, you don't hate it, but it's not grabbing you. And yeah, that must be such a weird feeling.
Yeah, it really is. And I don't, I think that I listen to music in a different way than maybe like some of the people who've been on the podcast, like even that you
Mm-hmm.
guys do. Like, I don't always
Right.
analyze every single song. Like, I don't, for myself, need to do that to feel a connection to an
Mm-hmm.
album. Sometimes it's just like the sound that I really connect to, or just even like how I choose to interpret the song, or where it hits me in the time of my life that I'm in, or whatever. And there are songs on this album that, because I was thinking, like, are there songs that I want to go and like just like drive around and blast in my car? And there are songs that like I should, like, there are definitely ones where normally I feel like I would do that. And I'm curious if it will, just the way it has in the past, kind of grow on me, and I'll find myself like just falling in love with these songs, or if it is one where, yeah, 2 weeks from now, I'm not even listening to it anymore.
We should probably get you back on the show to get an update.
Yeah, I'll definitely give you guys an update. And in the lead up to this, especially when the album didn't come out when he said it was going to, I went back and listened to all the old albums, kind of like what you guys were doing, and remembered how much I connected with them and how many memories I have associated with them and all of that. So I think that was also kind of right in the back of my mind while I was listening to this too. I had a truly vivid memory of how much these past albums and songs have meant to me personally.
Yeah, but that's the weird part of being a Kanye fan. There are such highs and such lows, and just in a weird state now where, like, not that it's low, but like you wish it could be high. You're just mostly just confused and you don't know how to think of Kanye. And that's such a weird way to go into an album.
Yeah. I guess, what do you think? Do you think that, like, what does it mean not to like or connect with this album? Like, do you think that would have happened with anything that he would have released? Or do you think it has to do with what this album is and what it's about?
Man,
you know what I mean?
This is the easy answer to that. I feel like it's just a combination of everything. Like,
yeah,
obviously your experiences and the way you're living your life and the way that situates juxtaposed next to the way Kanye's living his life, like that's obviously going to warp the way you think about an album. And that's definitely done that for me. Like, when people look at me and say, like, oh, you're just such a Kanye stan and you're looking for meaning and blah, blah, blah. I kind of just agree with them. Like, well, yeah, like that's me. Like, that's what I do. Like, I want to understand Kanye, and I do want to, like, try to make sense of the stuff he says sometimes, even though it doesn't come out well. Like, that's the state I'm in. That's the journey I'm on. Like, I'm very empathetic to somebody that maybe doesn't deserve the level of empathy I'm giving him to, but that's just where I'm at. So, like, that is my journey with Jesus is King. It's weird in the first listen and I don't connect. By the fifth listen, I'm like, this feels like everything Kanye's been leading up to for 15 years. Like, that is just part of me. And at the same time, I like the sound of it. Like, the nuances of the sound are starting to open up to me. And I'm like, Kanye did it again. Like, he's a fucking production genius, you know? With you, I think that's true. It's just the way it is. And that's what art is. Like, art shouldn't be easy. It should be something you envelop yourself in, and you come out the other side. Like, it's this transcendent experience. It's supposed to be fulfilling and life-changing. And if it's just not grabbing you for whatever reason, because of whatever path you're on, that's just the way it is. That's art. Like, that's the beauty and, like, the tragedy of art.
Yeah. No, that's a really good way of putting it. So do you think that there is, like, any world where you aren't going to like a Kanye album? I'm just, like, genuinely curious, because I think it
Right.
kind of gets at what you were talking about, like that you just want to be on this journey with this person.
I mean, I don't want to go that far, because I think if Kanye made a bad album, I would think it's a bad album. Like, if he didn't do what I thought he was capable of, and there wasn't a cohesive narrative on an album, and, you know, if the songs were, like, half-assed, like, yeah, I'd probably not like it, but I just don't think Kanye's capable of that. Like, for somebody who can't meet deadlines, like, I still think of him as, like, a perfectionist in a lot of ways. And just the way he pours himself into songs and how different they are. Like, to me, I don't really listen to a lot of gospel music, but to me, this sounds like nothing I've ever heard in many ways, like all the other albums did. And I guess that's just because of the way Kanye is. I guess you're probably right that I probably will never not like a Kanye album.
And I do think that's actually, like, a part of the beauty of this album is that there are probably a lot of people listening who don't listen to gospel music and have never listened to that. And I think that's really cool that they're getting this introduction. And like I said, I haven't been on Twitter a whole ton, but I have to think that for people who are religious and are identify as Christians, that it's cool that there are a lot of people being introduced to Christianity or somebody's journey on a spiritual path. I think that aspect of it is probably like really rewarding for a lot of people.
Yeah. So yeah,
But
I love
also,
it. Honest,
kind of,
middle
what
of
do
the road.
you, right? I'm middle of the road. What do you make of it? I think it surprises me that what I've seen, at least, that the biggest criticism has been is like the production and the mixing and
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
As somebody who sees Kanye as a perfectionist, like, what do you make of that criticism? Do you find that something that people just like, they just want to find something to complain about, or do you think that's legit?
For anybody who's speaking about it, like technically, it can like actually notice clipping and stuff. Like, I guess I can't speak to that. I
Yeah.
will say though that I interviewed Mike Dean, and he said like there's no clipping on any song, and I'll fight you if you say there is. So,
Oh my God.
when people say shit like that, I'm like, are you right? Like, do you know what you're talking about? So I never get involved in that convo.
Same.
As
I'm
far
always
as like,
surprised that like normal people can hear that stuff. I'm like, what are
I,
you hearing
well,
that I'm not?
I know that's what I mean is like, I feel like sometimes not that people are bullshitting, but like maybe they just don't quite know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, as far as the mixing, I think again, because people like, okay, so one thing people point out is how like echoey uh, Pusha T sounds on Use This Gospel. And I
Hmm.
heard that the first time too. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this sounds terrible. I, and I mean it when Kanye's perfectionist, because I never think anything like that is accidental. Like, sure, he added
Interesting.
water sounds to water, and like he didn't have that ready, and like that's kind of annoying. And he made up that excuse in the Life of Pablo, like, oh, an album's like a living thing, like I can change it whenever I want. Like, okay, sure. Um, like that part of it is like kind of annoying, but um, I don't. I guess I never think like just flat out terrible mistakes are made in the mixing. Like, to me, Pusha T is meant to sound a little bit removed. I feel like it adds emotion to his voice, like he's screaming it into like a bad microphone or something, and it sounds kind of like, to me, Pusha T represents like old Kanye who hadn't found God, and No Malice represents new Kanye because Malice is like a Christian, and Kenny G comes in with this like heavenly music. Like, to me, when I think about a Kanye song like that, I'm like, why are you complaining about Pusha T sounding weird? Like,
Yeah.
are you looking at like the emotion of it? Like,
Yeah.
people want to get so technical with it in a way that like it just kind of bores me. I just don't agree with that. It's not the way I listen to music.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like, I listen to music like on my shitty, Apple earbuds, so like, I'm never gonna listen to it with like the
Yeah,
nicest equipment and stuff to where I'll be able to really appreciate that aspect of it.
yeah. And we've had two people come on and talk about pretty much the production and the mixing so far. And the last guy, Martin, who's like a fucking genius when it comes to that stuff, he wrote all the production stuff for Yeezus. It was just talking about like how immaculate the mixing is, and like how everything is so purposeful, and how he was like picking apart like little things that Kanye did in the songs. Like, Kanye's just on a god level. Like, I've just accepted it. So whenever people say stuff like that, I'm like, you might be right, but it just doesn't bother me.
For sure. No, that makes a lot of sense too. And I was
Hmm.
just thinking about this too, in terms of like the lead up to this album, is that it's also interesting to me that this was the album that I've been most removed from Kanye in lead up to it. And I wonder what my reaction would be if I had gone to a listening party like you had,
Oh yeah.
or like, I didn't even watch Kanye's Coachella performance, the Sunday service. Like, I watched clips, so like, I didn't watch the full thing. I didn't watch the live
It was
stream.
long.
What was that?
It was long. So
It was long. Yeah. And I wonder, because like when I think about like Life of Pablo or Yeezus, for example, like I was in it in the lead up. So I was like super, super ready for the album to come out. And I wonder if I would have had a different reaction to this one if I was more in it in the lead up.
yeah, I get that. I actually think I'm in a weird middle ground. You would look at my Twitter and call me crazy, because like we're just so involved with the kind of community and everything. But that's mostly Chris. I consider
Right.
myself a
He mostly
stan.
runs the Twitter, right?
Yeah, and he's out there like really engaged with the kind of community. Like, I can tell that's the way he's a Kanye fan. And I'm a stan too, but it's probably just more my personality and the way I am. Like, I'm not that kind of fan. Like, even if I went to the Jesus is King listening party, like, my initial reaction isn't to go down and get into the mob of people, or like on the St. Pablo's tour. Like, I was like, oh, I don't want to be in that mob of people underneath the stage. Like, that sounds terrible. I want to sit in a seat.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, totally.
so I think in a lot of ways, I'm not like an uber Kanye fan in the way people would expect me to be as somebody who runs the show. I'm this makes me sound so lame. Like, I'm an adult Kanye fan now. So I kind of feel like I'm always kind of on that level with Kanye. Like, I love him so much, and his art means so much to me, and what he's trying to express when he's out in the world and the inspiration he's trying to create. Like, that all speaks to me, but I never go into a Kanye album like crazy, like teenage fan. I don't know if I'm stating this properly, but
no, totally. I know what I mean.
And so I kind of feel like I'm always in that state with Kanye. Like, I go into it with like a very open mind, but I'm not like a screaming girl at a Beatles concert, you know. I'm ready to criticize a Kanye album and pick apart things, but
you're not like a Taylor Swift stan.
I'm definitely not.
You know what I mean?
Taylor
Like,
or Kanye.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I think of her, like crazy fans sometimes.
I don't even know what point I was trying to make and all that. I think maybe just explaining that Chris runs the Twitter is what I was really trying to do.
No, I mean,
so when you think we're crazy, it's all Chris, not me.
You're just gonna say whatever you want in the week, like that he's gone and can't defend himself.
Yeah, I'm taking advantage of it.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's super interesting though. And I do hope that I'll come back to Kanye in the same way that I was before, and that I reconnect. I think that it will happen at some point.
It is tough now because, and not to get like super political, I'm definitely not a Trump fan, and you're obviously not one either. And
yeah,
I think for a lot of people, it is different than the Bush years. Not that it should be looked at different, because Bush did a lot of terrible things.
Totally, yeah.
But Trump does feel like the atmosphere is scarier. And it feels like, man, we were on such a good, like so many people thought this country was on this such a good path, and it feels different now. And it feels like it's not the time to explore this internal process where you want to express how, you know, you want to be able to freely express yourself through Trump. Like, you just can't do it through Trump because he represents something so awful. And so many people are scared by him and have been hurt by him that you can't look past that layer. Like, you just can't get around it. And until that atmosphere is gone, and maybe it never will be gone. Like, maybe this country has just hit a turning point, and like, it's no bullshit anymore. If we're capable of electing Trump, like, things need to change. Yeah. So maybe there isn't a place for Kanye anymore, but maybe someday, like, things will be better, and like, that won't be clouding our judgment about him.
Yeah, exactly. Because I see like what he's getting at or what he's trying to say, but it is a vibe of like, now's not the time. And like, also you could have picked anybody else to represent this idea that you're exploring.
Yeah, but he's Kanye. He chose the ultimate symbol.
Yes.
Like, he went to the nth degree. That's just what Kanye does.
Totally. Yeah.
And
so maybe part of this, yeah, exactly. And so maybe part of this is like reframing how I was saying, like, view Kanye in my mind, what I expect of him, what kind of fan I am of him. And like I said, like, I like this album. Like, I feel like I'm coming across like, I don't like it.
Right.
I like it, but it's just different. Like, I like it in a different way than past ones. And maybe that's like, okay. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting. I mean, now that I'm thinking this, it makes us sound fucking insane. It's been 24 hours. And we're talking about it like it's been out for years. Like, maybe next week, like, we feel completely different about it. But, you know, I think that's the beauty of an episode like this. Like, we really are caught up in the moment of it. And there are a lot of emotions that go into a first listen of a Kanye album. So.
Yeah, no, there definitely are. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to jaw about?
I don't know. I mean, there always is. But I don't know. I mean, maybe something to explore in a different time is that I'm having a really hard time with Kim lately.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Let's do an episode.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm
That's
actually kind
also
of
been
checked out
tough.
of that stuff.
Yeah, I know. So that's something to get into. But other than
Again,
that,
not like a crazy Kanye saying like I don't follow every move of Kanye, and I'm kind of the same way with Kim. Like I'm a big fan, but at some point I've just kind of stopped paying attention as much, and I really don't know what's going on with her at all. So
yeah, for sure.
besides the 13th Amendment shit, which is
Yep.
great.
Exactly.
But I
Yeah.
think people
No,
keep
I hope
forgetting
that I've like
her and Kanye.
what?
Go ahead. Nothing.
Oh, I was just gonna say I hope that I didn't offend anybody. or yeah, like I said, like I was nervous to talk about this. But I just think that there's like an interesting conversation to be had in the evolution of being a Kanye fan and what happens when like your fucking favorite artist goes in a direction that like you just can't get on board with or you don't agree with politically or culturally or whatever.
Totally. Excuse the police car going by.
They're coming for you.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm glad you're on, because I feel like of anybody that we're going to have on the show for first reactions, like you're going to bring that kind of balanced perspective. Whereas everyone else, like Jordan and Cole and Martin, like we're all going to love Kanye no matter what. So like,
yeah,
I'm glad we
exactly.
had this guy.
Well, good.
So I guess this is the end. I guess you wouldn't really have anything to plug.
Nope.
Other than Fender Bender magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
If you own an auto repair shop, check it out.
Exactly. Yep. If you're in the automotive aftermarket, we got tons for you.
So yeah, go look up Anna and you guys can draw about that. But otherwise, thank you so much, Anna, for coming on. It was great to have you back.
Yeah, it was really good to be back.
And we're going to end the show in our new catchphrase that Cole came up with. It's no longer keep it loopy. It's keep it holy.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.